Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Leitner? Here. Commissioner Lechka?
In the bathroom.
Commissioner Rice? Commissioner Duckham? Here. Commissioner Alexander?
Present.
Commissioner Mahoney? Commissioner Palachik?
Here.
Commissioner Elwell?
Here.
Chairman Shotwell?
Here. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, Administrator Overton.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning. It's a little different format. As you know, generally we are sitting over there. We've found that that works really well for having a, we'll say, a little more informal environment. And personally, I already miss it. I kind of like that informal, close environment with the commissioners. However, it's really not set up for microphones, and it's a little more difficult for folks to hear each other sometimes from the board perspective. So we're going to move over here until such time that we can figure a better way, if you will, to do it. With that said, though, I'd like to introduce Tim Rogers from the EG Enterprise Group to give us a presentation. Good morning.
Thank you for having us this morning. What we wanted to do, we had met previously with one of the committees, and I know several of the commissioners were there, but we thought we'd revisit that presentation, kind of give you a year in review, if you will, an update on some of the activities that have taken place. The enterprise group's changed quite a bit over the past 12 to 15 months as far as our activities and how we're organized, and you know, Mike's been very involved in that and been very helpful to that. But we thought that'd be just a good opportunity for us to share that with you. And you know, in that spirit of communications, as we go through this, if you guys have questions, please stop me, ask me, comments, whatever. Don't wait till we're done, because I will have passed over it by then. So if you have anything, questions, concerns, please just shout and we'll go through those. These are kind of the numbers. We track a lot of numbers every year. The new jobs, retained jobs, investment. This has been a really good year for us. I think last year into 2012, which the announcement was made in 2013, Jackson County was actually tied, and I think we did share this through a press release, but nationally there's a magazine called Site Selection Magazine, which is kind of the standard bearer for economic development organizations as far as how do we do every year, and it's basically the state competition. It's called the Governor's Cup. But they also rank communities, counties, local units of local government as far as new activity when it comes to investment and jobs, expansions, and so on. And they have a whole list of criteria. Debbie collects those all year long, and then we submit those, and actually today's the deadline to submit them for 2013, which will come out next spring. So anyway, I bring that up because last year, and the important part is it's not just about attraction. It's about what you have today, how it's growing. Attraction counts, but expansions count too. And last year, it's done on a population breakdown. We're in the 200,000 and under population category. Jackson County tied for second in the United States with numbers of new expansions. And actually, we tied for second with our neighbor, Battle Creek. So that shows you the amount of activity that takes place in our area in that past year. Where we'll end up this year, who knows? You know, the economy's improved, a lot of things have happened, but our numbers still look pretty good. I think, Amy, as you know, we track the scorecard. This November scorecard will be coming out in a couple days. Our $131 million investment from businesses this year ranks third?
Yeah, third highest since 1999.
So that's another good indicator of business activities really starting to pick up, which from your perspective, and I know from the city's perspective, hopefully that turns into increased assessments, more revenue, and so on. That's why we're all here. We're going to walk through some of those projects pretty quickly. Some of them you may know, some of them you may have not seen. Not all of them we've touched personally, but because we keep track of this, we try to keep our fingers on as much manufacturing activity as actually takes place in the county. A lot of it will be because partners from townships, villages, cities have approved tax abatements for these projects. Some of them are much bigger than that, obviously Mackey's one. Mackey and Technique, we put at the top because those are projects we've been involved in. Those are also projects that have taken, in some instances, 2 years or more to come to pass. And I think that's a part that when we talk with a lot of people in the media and in the community, they don't often realize how long some of these projects take to come to pass. The Mackey project, I know when I was first interviewing for this job, the EG staff was actually working on their wetlands issue, which was the key issue to get that expansion to take place. Addressing their wetlands issue and mitigation was a big part of whether they could even do that project out at the industrial park. Technique's another example, and actually another example of a wetlands issue that I know Amy's worked on for almost 2.5 to 3 years. Because of the river, they could not expand there as many ways as they tried to make it work. And so earlier this spring, they worked with Blackman Township, and we arranged for them to be out in the industrial park out there. These are examples of some big companies and some small companies. And you'll notice, I think, what's interesting and what's really important to us, it's kind of our bread and butter. It's 8 jobs at a time. It's 10 jobs at a time. We get to that 300 job number because it takes a lot of small projects to make that happen. Lamatic, MMP, which is out in the city's industrial park. Castor Concepts is an interesting one. They just had, some of you might have been out there for their open house for their new expansion. When we were out there talking with them about that early on, I said, so do you have a plan for what you're going to do with this new building? He goes, no, I just have trust that the economy's going to pick up. And when we were out there, they had actually put in a new powder coating line, but there was still a great deal of that building that they say that they know over the next 1.5 years, because the economy's picking up, that they'll be able to fill up that expansion. Lomar's another one, small expansion out in the Hanover-Horton area. A lot of these people don't see every day. You know, if you don't happen, even Lomar's, if you're not looking at Subway, you would never see that they're expanding behind there and added 15,000 square feet between that and some office space. So, and another interesting thing about Lomar, actually, Amy and I were out doing a retention call, which we have done about 125 of those this year. A great deal of that expansion was because Eaton had a plan in Indiana, and it was a line that they were going to discontinue. They no longer wasn't meeting their profit margins, and so Lomar basically bought that business from Eaton that was located in Indiana and moved it up here to Hanover-Horton. Cox Brothers, just recently, that was an EDC loan that was approved. So a lot of those small businesses, which is our bread and butter, like I said. We put HCL on here only because they just did have their open house. I'm sure many of you were invited to that. And JSP, which is out in Blackman, their expansion's underway. And that's another one of those where we were competing with a couple other plants, and they actually secured a contract in Canada, and location. This plant was the best located to be actually take advantage of that new contract in Canada, so they're doing that expansion here. A couple other smaller projects. Clavons, it's great to see that there's a building on that site. For those of you involved in the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, the EG who helped staff that actually did some brownfield work on that site prior to that being purchased by Clavon so that they could put up that new product or new building. And then the General Products building, which I know we've all hoped something would happen there. And actually, that project, I think they've closed on that now and are in the process of moving some equipment into there. Acme, that's one thing that I know I've talked to you about before. The whole Armory Arts area and the property that the EG owns 100%. Obviously, we're involved in some limited liability corporations there in a very small way. But the Acme property is one that, over the past year, we've done a lot of work and due diligence on to prepare that to be able to sell for development. Whether that's sell for $1, as some of my board members would like us to do, or sell it anyway. We'd like to be able to get that off of our ownership role and into the private sector so things could happen there. We basically have done, with the help of EnviroLogic and some of the reprogramming of brownfield money, basically told the developer what you can and can't do on that site, how you can handle stormwater, how you can handle for those of you who know the site, it has several steps down in grade, and that's a big issue when it comes to stormwater. And then yesterday, 2 days ago, what day did we go to JJR? 2 days ago. I lose track. Pat Dorr was kind enough, and he's one of, JJR is one of our investors. We brought a committee of investors, and I know Mike wasn't able to attend. We had Brandon on that list, so Mike's on it now. But to look at not only the Acme property, but the whole neighborhood there, including how does it fit in with the fairgrounds, how does it fit in with United Way Corner, how does it fit in with the medical building, what is it we want that area to look like, so that we can do some planning from the perspective of if a developer comes and says, well, I just want this corner and I want to put a Burger King on it. That would be great, and that's progress. But when we're talking about that part of the city, which is kind of the northern part of downtown, maybe we should know what we all want there. So we spent a lot of time, over 2 or 3 hours, with some good help from Pat's staff, kind of framing that. So you'll be seeing some of that coming forward. Hopefully we'll have a follow-up meeting coming up in January, Mike, that you might be able to get involved with so you can share your perspective. But there was a lot of discussion about the river goes right between this site and the county fairgrounds, and how do we make this work together? How do you take advantage of the water? How do you deal with the challenge of the railroad, because it's there and it's not going to go away? And then obviously the county brownfield authority was very involved in helping fund the demolition of the Consumers Building. This slide has pictures of school-age children on it, but I want to really emphasize the importance of our partnership with the Manufacturers Association and the Academy. Right now, I just came from a Region 9 meeting late yesterday, which is the MEDC region we're a part of. The number one issue for our businesses right now is skilled training. Where are the people going to come from? We had a meeting with some manufacturers locally in Jackson County, some of which the people you would know. One of them said to me, I'm at the end of my ownership career with this business. I want to be able to pass it on to my children, but unless I can put people in this building to take care of what needs to be made here with the skills that they need to have, I'm not going to have a business to pass on. Right now, our challenge is putting skilled people into the jobs, not only here, but in Hillsdale, Lenawee, Monroe, Livingston, across the state of Michigan, but it's also across the United States. And I have to stress that while you see school-age children here, and they're not going to be the ones that fill the job tomorrow, our initiative to try to get engineering as elementary into the 3rd and 4th grade level so they understand the concepts of how a measuring tape actually helps you build a birdhouse and how you measure 8ths and 16ths is one of those things that you have to do to fill the funnel. And our manufacturers are thinking very creatively about how do we move this ball forward, because we all know that you can't make a profit if you can't put a product out the door. So this issue has become extremely important to everybody, not only in the county and in the Midwest, but across the world. And our business people have been, I think, out front in that. We've had a lot of people that have tried to duplicate what JAMA and the Academy have done. None of them have been quite as successful as us, which I think is a testament to our businessmen and women who run these companies. One of the things that we're going to try to do in the next year with hopefully some MEDC funding is can we expand the JAMA model to the balance of those counties in Region 9 so that our partners in Livingston and Monroe and some manufacturers in Washtenaw, but Lenawee especially, can take advantage of what we've learned in how we put these classes on, and we can share our curriculum with them. So, while we want ourselves to grow, we still need to grow as a region. We need to keep all of our businesses strong. A couple of more examples of projects that aren't traditional manufacturing, but are projects that, especially with our works with LDA or LDFAs and DDAs, the staff has done a lot of work on these projects. The Grand River Marketplace really wasn't a project of ours, except it's an example of, we get a lot of inquiries. We get phone calls every day, sometimes all day long, about where do I go to do this? Who can help me do that? And that was one that John called us first and said, I'm really interested in this building. He also looked at some of the property out at Armory Arts Village and Arts 634, where we kind of helped him steer through the process of how do you make these things happen in a local government situation that he really wasn't familiar with the players or the rules and regulations. So This is, I think, one of the switches, if you will, or the enhancements that we've taken on in the past year, is to try to tell our story externally. We all know a lot about our business base, we know a lot about our businesses, we know a lot about our workforce, but people outside of Jackson County and a lot of people outside of Michigan really don't know what we're about. Michigan, rightly or wrongly, has had a lot of perceptions or misperceptions about doing business here. So when the state sponsors the Pure Michigan 400 and they brought in 12 site selectors for that race weekend, we actually hosted one of them for 4 days. So he got a very good flavor of Jackson County, from going to have conies to all the way to golfing at the country club and going to the race itself. Russ, who was from Phoenix, had never been to Michigan before, didn't know anything about Michigan. So it was our effort to educate him. But it was also interesting in that we had a couple settings where he met with business people where he not only learned more about Michigan, but they got an outsider's perspective about how people view Michigan. Whether, like I said, whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. If he's helping a corporation make a decision about site location, or in the last several years it's been about consolidating plants, it's important to know what those people think of us so that we know how to market to them, which kind of rolls into the MEDC issue that we want to talk about. This is a project, and I know Mike and I have talked a little bit about this, about the Greater Ann Arbor region, and I kind of want to back up to the week after I was hired, so that would have been June of last year. I was participating in a board meeting, the EG board meeting, so a couple of you may have even been in that meeting, through a phone. I'd been hired but not here, so I was on a phone conference call. And this is actually when the state set up these regions. And we're in Region 9. Each region has a head or a lead economic development group that the state works through. In our case, it's Ann Arbor Spark. There was a lot of conversation about why would we be associated with Ann Arbor, or should we be associated with Battle Creek, or some people, and one person that now I can put her name and face together, she's no longer on the board, was, you know, we're not Ann Arbor, we shouldn't be associated with Ann Arbor. It's not who we are or what we do. And someone said to me, and I don't even remember who it was at this point, are you still on the phone? What do you think? And I said, why wouldn't you want to be associated with Ann Arbor? Everybody in the world knows where Ann Arbor is. And that's been borne out several times. This spring we did a trip to Chicago to meet with site selectors, several of whom I've known for many years through my career. And when I said, where's Jackson? They said, we know where Jackson is. It's on the way to Ann Arbor. Now that may sound like a negative, but if you ask them where Owasso was, they don't know where Owasso is. So my point is, you've addressed the first issue about, do you know where we're at? And then you can say, what do you know about us? And when you answer that question, and actually I was having this conversation with a young woman at lunch that day, she said, well, how big is it? And I said, oh, you know, the city's 35,000, the county's 170,000. That doesn't even get them to bat their eye. That's half the suburb that they live in Chicago. It's not, when they're helping somebody make a decision, it's not a big enough labor pool to make the list, basically. But when you frame it differently, when you frame it that if you take every county that's within a 35-mile drive of us, and that's 1.1 million people and 2 Big Ten universities, that's a different story. Because a 35-minute drive for them might be 10 miles, you know. They don't view things in miles like we do. They view things in how long does it take to get there. So that's a lot of what we have done. And, you know, the marketing book that we shared earlier, we brought more copies today, is about how do we fit in this bigger picture. So when the state put out an RFP, which they're doing now again, about what the MEDC regions wanted to do, our proposal was to create a regional website to start to talk about the data sets that show who we are, what we make, how many people we have, what kind of skill sets they have, so that those site selectors like Russ in Phoenix, he has a place to go to get that information. And that's really important for us, and how do we kind of frame what we look like to the outsider. The other part of this, up until now, when somebody wanted information on a site or a building, they'd call us, and we kept that database. Sometimes it was very accurate, sometimes it's not. It depends where their brokers put that in. That has improved greatly with, I kind of think, an enhanced relationship that we have with the Association of Realtors now. But that still was just, what do I want to say? Kind of a static report. It said, here's building X. It has this many square feet, this high ceilings, and that's what it is. Or here's a site, it's this big, it has this size of water line, this much pressure in a gas line, and that's it. What we've done with the money we got from the state of Michigan for Region 9 was enhance that greatly. And I'm going to have Debbie come up here and click through a few things so you can see this and give you a real-life example for a retail prospect that we don't know through a local broker who we've been asked not to share his name, but it's about the county property on the interstate, the property that we all see as someday being a retail hub. And their questions were perfectly set up to show how this website works. So I'm going to ask Debbie to come up and kind of click through that because she's the one who does a lot of this work for us. So.
Good morning. This is very exciting. It's very nice to have this website, and you'll see here in just a moment. This website is housed on the Enterprise Group website on our homepage. You click on property search, but I wanted you to see the entire GAR website. Greater Ann Arbor Region is GAR. Sounds like a pirate, I know, but and what you'll do when you get to the website is you can go on to search properties, and the property that we provided information to our local broker was the Blackman DDA and the county property. So what you'll do here, bear with me just a moment, you click on sites, and you all can use this. This is very user-friendly. It's available for your use, and I'll show you how you can view community profiles once we view the site. So you're clicking on sites. You can look for buildings, businesses, communities. And then what you'll do is you'll go over to the search bar here. Just a moment here. Excuse me, more filters. I've been on vacation, so I'm a little out of touch on things. You'll click on county, go to Jackson County, and then back over to search. And the very first property here is the Blackman DDA and the county property, so you'll click on that. And as you see here on the top bar, it not only has the property report where it says what the zoning is, the amount of acreage, and shows you different pictures, you have labor force information at your fingertips. You have demographics, consumer spending, wages, business types, and housing information just for this particular property. And you can enter any address that you'd like. If you're working, if we get a call for a specific building, we can do this information for any address here in the county. And it's wonderful because what you can do here is, if you see, you can do a 10-mile radius, you can do 20, 40-mile radius. For our broker that we worked with, he wanted to demonstrate a 20 and a 40-mile radius for his client. And so within our marketing book, we were able to put that information in there for his client. You can also do drive time. You can, and then just click after you, if you want to change those, then you just click your modify your report, and that information comes up right at your fingertips. So it's very exciting. I'm sure it can do a lot more than what I know at this point. So it's very exciting, the different things that you can find in here. And then also, it's got a lot of information. You can add attachments to all the properties. So we have overview, roadmap. We have different maps that we can show. So it's very exciting. It's very, very exciting. And we're working with JAR, the Jackson Area Association of Realtors. They're an EG investor. So we're working with them very closely. I'm not sure what happened here. I apologize. We're working with them very closely, and they're going to be providing a feed that goes into the Zoom Prospector website for commercial industrial properties here in Jackson County. So that's a great partnership that we have with those folks. And one thing I wanted to show you too, which is something that you all will find exciting and be able to use. You can click on community profiles, go to the county, click on Jackson County, and search. And then all of these different reports can come up for Jackson County, showing the community, the labor force, demographics, consumer spending, wages, and housing. There's great information in here, and we encourage you to go to our website and use it, and if you have any questions, you can call me directly. I'll be glad to walk you through it if you have any questions, or if you have any problems, or wondering what different things it can do for you. So it's very exciting, so we're very happy that we have this for our use. Are there any questions about the website at this time? Yes.
How often is the website updated with current information?
I think JAR had indicated that it's real-time, like daily basis. So that's going to be really nice to have current information that's accurate, so we don't have to chase down the property owner and say, hey, is this still available, that type of thing. So that's going to be really great to have current information right at our fingertips. Yes, you're welcome.
The other part of the update, which is even more important for us, is all that labor force and the demographic data, Julie, is done by GIS Zoom Prospector. So, when we do this marketing book, which has some different things in it, it's Debbie and Michelle and all of us have to sit down and figure it all out and go to all those data sources. So for this site, we don't have to do anything. With our contract with GIS Zoom Prospector, which is pretty much the standard bearer for these type of websites, they're based out in California, they do all the information. So if there's new labor force information that comes out next week, they'll update the labor force stuff. So it's all updated on it as it rolls and becomes available.
Thank you.
The important part of this is that a lot of times today, the way Deloitte in Chicago, for example, might work is they have a staff of researchers that if they have a project, they do this all on their own. Sometimes they never even call us. They just are constantly gathering data and filing and librarying data. And if we don't have a place for them to get that, they may not even call us at all. The other thing that happens is in projects is a lot of times they get that data and they do call us and they want to see if we have the same data, if ours is up to date. That's all about credibility. I mean, if we're giving them something that's a couple years old, they're going to say, you guys aren't really on top of your game. So this was a huge improvement, not only for us as a county, but for our region as a whole. And so it was somewhere in the $80,000 to $90,000 to do this, which we would have never had the resources to be able to do on our own. So wanted to share that with you. The other thing that we did this year, and this was a partnership with South Central Michigan Works, Lenawee Hillsdale, and ourselves, we actually entered into a contract with the Workforce Intelligence Network. And that is the sister to the South Central Michigan Works that's over in Washtenaw County and Livingston County. And I think Washtenaw Community College is in it as well. They have a database system and staff that can basically tell you, if you give me a job category, they can tell you how many openings there are, and you can say by county. So if we want to say Jackson County, or we wanted to say 15 counties, for CNC machinists, they can tell you how many openings there are in those counties within the last 30 days, what the wage rate, if it's posted, what those are. So they don't just use South Central Michigan Works, they go to Monster, they go to Career Builder, and they gather all that information. Now that might kind of, data gets us all geeked up. It might not get you guys all excited, but why is that important? When we're doing retention calls, say I'm at Lomar, and Ron said, I've been posted a CNC machinist position, and I can't get anybody to apply. And we're saying, okay, well, what's the wage rate? And he says, well, for an experienced CNC machinist, it's starting out for me is $19 or $20 an hour, right? Somewhere like that. So we can say, okay, well, let's go and see what everybody else has posted up for that. I mean, if your competition in Lenawee is going to pay $22, nobody's going to apply for that job because Lenawee is not that far away to drive. A lot of the business decisions that our manufacturers and all other types of businesses, Allegiance or consumers, anyone, are making are based on data. And if we're not part of that mental mindset of being able to gather it and share it, then we lose out on being a valuable asset to business people. So the WIN network has allowed us to do that without having to house the data or without having to have a staff person that's an expert. So the way this has worked is we've contracted, our 3 counties have contracted with them for 2 years. Basically, it was with South Central Michigan Works dollars, no dollars out of our budget, and a grant from the USDA to be able to do this. And it's around $62,000 for 2 years. And the nice thing about it is, our staff is trained on how to use it, but because we're neophytes, if you will, they can call the WIN experts and say, I'm trying to find this, can you tell me how to work through the system? So we build capacity. We don't just call somebody and they give it to us. We learn how to use it and how to massage it. And so one of the things, I'm going to have Michelle just click through a couple of these on a CNC machinist query that we actually were doing for the academy. So they knew some of this information and how they build their curriculum, and we look smarter to our existing manufacturer base. So you just want to show them a couple examples?
Hello. Get back over here to the software. Okay, here we go. All right, this is the website that has the labor force. This is the website that has the labor force information, and it's called Labor Insight Burning Glass. And there you can search from all the way to from the national level all the way down to the county or even city level for current job postings. And when I say current, they really are current. They're within 3 days lag time. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics and those traditional sources sometimes takes 6 months to 2 years to get that information out. And by that time, the trends are already outdated. So this is really great. Right now, I have all the counties over here that touch Jackson. So these are the 7 counties that Tim has instructed us and that we feel, are commuting, our level of commuting. People come here to work and go elsewhere. So this is our labor force. Down here, I'm going to click on this occupation down here, and you can put in CNC and add this to the filter. And it's going to tell you and update the report, and it's going to tell you, oh, we have to we have to pick a thing first. Okay, historic trends. And it's searching. This is actually, it has computer robots that go out daily and search the internet. Yeah. They actually have a patent on it. Not like hackers, no. I don't know why it's taking so long. Must be, it's a busy time of year for the internet. Anyway, while this is spinning, you can look for the occupations, you can look for certain, these are all the reports you can run. Summary table for occupations that require less than a bachelor's degree. You can do historic trends. You can do top locations for a specific title. You can do it by industries. You can find information on skills and credentials that are being looked for by employers. And this is the coolest part, you can even look for job postings that are showing that employers are actually posting right now. So this is right now, this is what we're seeing, the occupation family. That's not what I want. I'm going to remove all of these counties and do a Michigan because I want to show you something. Come on. You can add the state by that way, by clicking on the map or by adding it. I'm going to remove the state and just do, look for top locations. So if you can see on here, Michigan is coming up, there's actually 7,529 postings available with that filter. So, but out of all of those, and that's a national picture, Michigan is number 2 in the whole nation. So we obviously need CNC machinists. And so this information anyway from all of this, that we can run the skills and credentials. It can help people come up with a curricula to, see where we have gaps in our labor force and develop programs to fill those. And so this is it's a great program. And, pardon? California.
California.
So let me get out of here.
The nice thing about this is for our employers or for prospective employers, we can kind of give them a really good, weekly, here's what the labor market looks like. And you can query that, you can get to the point where you could find that one job Lomar has posted. So can get very, very specific. And again, the importance of this is really driven about having good data that business people need to make decisions. And when you see that kind of number, we're hoping that sometimes policymakers in Lansing see those kind of numbers, so that when they're talking about education curriculum or they're talking about how they're going to allocate job funding, right now we're going through a little bit of a challenge at the statewide level that one of their pots of job training dollars, they've met their goal as far as allocating dollars to existing employers with job openings for training things like CNC machinists. So they said they met their goal, and now they're just going to use their money for new employers and attraction. Well, if you were one of those people that had that many 7,000 job openings in Michigan, when you want to say to the governor, hey, we still need 7,000 more people, let's keep the money where it's at. So it's good. It's a really good tool. You can do a lot of interesting things with it. Kind of want to wrap it. Oh.
Can you touch in the enterprise group now?
Good.
Coming up?
Good time to talk about that. Actually, our campaign kind of reorganized our board. And what it did, we had a lot of people, and not to avoid the small p politics, we had a lot of people that could have been very good board members, but really didn't have a stake in the game. You all had the biggest stake in the game. And what the board did through a series of kind of one-on-one meetings, group meetings, whatever, said, we need to have people running the organization that are actually paying the freight. So the way it works now, in your case, a $100,000 contribution guarantees you 2 seats on the board and guarantees you a permanent seat on the executive committee. You're the only one that fits in that category, obviously. However, we also, and we really didn't have a lot of participation from townships. I mean, we did it where we had contracts with the LDFAs or the DDAs, but the townships in general, Jim Dunn had always been a participant. Summit was about a $5,000 investor. We went out and spent a lot of time meeting with townships, and right now, between townships and villages, we have a little over 12 local government members. And the way we handled that was we tried to come up with a formula that we felt was fair. That came out a lot of the consternation over the past year about what's fair. Mike participated in that discussion. The city participated in that discussion. And what we came up with was a formula that was 0.0004% of commercial and industrial tax base, because we felt that was more of an ability to pay than population-based. Because some of our townships have very little commercial and industrial tax base. And so why should we ask them for more money? So we have local government investors from $200 to $100,000. The other part we did was, in the bylaws, it says from those investors that are townships, they will always have a seat on the EG board, and that seat will be determined by them. So the investing townships actually elect their representative to the EG board, and right now it's Jim Dunn. So we've done a lot of trying to say representation is based on investment. And our job, and one of the things we're trying to do this morning, is show what's the value for investment. I don't use the word contribution because I don't think anybody should contribute money to us. You should invest in us because we're going to give something back to you as an investor. So that's a lot of why we're trying to build this capacity, especially around data. When I came, and before we started this process, and Mike and Steve have been involved, I think we were around 60-40 if you took out the things that we did contractually for the LDFAs and the DDAs, around 60-40 public dollars compared to private dollars. We have pretty much flipped that. It's about 65-35 now. And that's because we went out to the private sector and said, look, we're doing things for you today. I mean, we do a lot of work on wetlands issue, tax abatement issue, and that's a value. And so that's our goal, is to keep business people understanding that we're here and we're doing things for them, and for that reason they should invest in our organization. So we've gone through a huge transformation in the last year, and I know especially you two have been involved in it, quite dramatically at some point. So we look very different than we did today, or did before today. Other questions? Yeah. Well, basically, we have a relationship with Michigan MEDC that we have what's called a business development person that's assigned to us, and we have probably, if not daily, weekly contact with them. They have a electronic connection which goes through our Region 9, but then we have a personal connection that goes through a guy named Tom Tarleton. So, we don't use the Pure Michigan brand that they do. One of the reasons is the Greater Ann Arbor region brand is we want to make sure that people are looking at us first before they look at the state of Michigan, if that makes sense. We want to put ourselves out there as we're the right place in Michigan to be. But as far as the Michigan brand goes in Pure Michigan, we do associate ourselves with that when it comes to like the sponsorship of the race, or when we accompany the state to go to Chicago to meet with site selectors or accounting firms, but we don't put it in our material. We connect it electronically, but we don't promote Pure Michigan as a brand. That would be that'd be great, except right now they don't even, and I guess this is their philosophy when it comes to business attraction. They don't even really have a unit internally that does that. Right. They contract with Southwest Michigan First out of Kalamazoo to do it for the state of Michigan. So whenever we do these call trips, they're actually organized by Southwest Michigan First. So it's I've been doing this a long time. There's probably 150 different models of the way to do it, and I don't know that there's ever been one that's determined to be the right one, frankly. Oh, yeah. Other questions or comments?
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Carl.
We know what Jackson County invests, and you made mention about, we'll call it your campaign with the townships and such. Not to break it down by individuals, but do you have a total of investments into the enterprise group for the other governmental entities?
I'm not going to probably get the dollars exactly right, but the separate of our contracts with the LDFAs and the DDAs, because I kind of look at those as fee for service, the townships and villages that participate is right around $28,000. It's 27 something.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? I'd just close by saying thank you for being an investor. foreign trade zone? No. Actually, the way there's a foreign trade zone that's based in Lansing, and then there's also one based in Battle Creek. And we've actually held seminars with them for local business people. The zone itself, as a geography, is not coming that direction. However, it's not very difficult to make any business a subzone of either one of those foreign trade zones, so that if they have an opportunity to do, for instance, bring a product in, add some kind of value and ship it back out and not have it taxed, so it could be in a subzone. Either one of those entities have indicated they would gladly do that for us, and frankly have asked us to help market that, which is one of the things we do when we go on those business retention calls. They are, and I would echo that, and actually, you're really good at getting one jump ahead of me, Steve. I was just going to close by saying the only reason we can do this, other than the fact that we have investors, is because if you look at the ED staff, it hasn't changed since I came here. I'm the change. The difference is every one of these 3 young women have said, I'll do that, I'll try that. When we go out and do this data thing, we didn't have any internal expertise. Michelle raised her hand and said, I'll give it a shot, I'll learn it. Doing more in marketing and web development, Debbie didn't have that experience. She said, I'll do it. And of course, when you talk about trying to walk the fine line between lots of different political and sometimes private sector animals, I would tell you Amy's one of the best people, and I've been doing this a long time. She's one of the best people at doing that I've ever met. So I was very blessed to be able to have staff that said, let's try something new. They weren't at all adverse to doing that. And that's the key to how you make an organization strong and how you grow it is, you got to have staff people that are willing to change, and these 3 certainly have done that. So I appreciate you recognizing that. Thanks. We appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tim. I think just if I may comment too, the data that you guys are providing is, obviously beyond pale. It's awesome, and we all know that business decisions generally data-driven. Government, of course, is trying to move in that direction too. We, in particular, try to be a data-driven organization. And towards that end, our next item is Honeywell. I think, last month we had a conversation with the board about doing an investment audit. It's an analysis, if you will, of how we use our utilities. Think of it that way on a simple term. And towards that end, we need, we're frankly, we're going to be seeking permission from the board to allow Honeywell to do an investment grade audit. They do that for free. Yet, at the same time, they say if you do not, at the end of that, do a project with them, you owe us roughly 7 cents per square foot of building that we audited. Well, given that we have more than 1 million square feet of buildings, it starts to add up. Thus, we'll need board approval to do that. I believe you've all have the agenda review form in front of you. The total cost potential on this, if we were to have them do the audit and then not do any project, would be in excess of $86,000. I would tell you that we do projects every year. We have money budgeted to do projects. And of course, Honeywell would also say that I think one time they can think of that where they did the audit, and for whatever reason, either it didn't make sense or for whatever reason they did not the company they audited did not pursue a project, and therefore had to pay the 7 cents per square foot. We don't anticipate that by any measure at all. In fact, we're very confident we won't have an issue there, given that the projects, the reason you do the audit is to derive the potential savings that you're going to see on your utilities, because we use that savings to pay for the debt service, pay for the construction of the new utility. So be it replacing windows or light bulbs or adding insulation or those sort of things. So with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thanks, Mike. You mentioned that if we didn't do any projects, so for hypothetically, if there was, ended up being one project that we wanted them to pursue, that would be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as the rest of it go and what we've read here, what I've read here, obviously this, from my perspective, this is a good case for creating more energy efficiency and obviously an opportunity for saving cost. I certainly agree with you on that, so thank you.
One of the things I would add as well is while the emphasis on the dollars, because you need to be able to pay for the improvements, we don't want to lose sight of that we really can change the environment in which we have 600 employees that work here. We can change the environment in which they work, which, more comfortable employees, they're not freezing, they're not, sweating, makes for a more productive person as well, so.
Mike, you've got it noted, $150,000 at the courthouse and $15,000 at North Lawn out of the capital improvement budget. Some time ago, we had moved money from a fund at the courthouse for I think they called it the Courthouse Improvement Fund or something, to the capital improvement. And we have that either segregated or named that way in the capital improvement budget, I think. So would this come out of that specifically, or hadn't it been thought of yet?
I can't necessarily answer that question there, where that money is or is not. I would tell you that we budget monies every year for capital improvements. I believe the monies you're speaking of are separate and apart from the monies that we're planning on using.
Would it not make sense to use this for that?
Anything that's related to the court, clearly we can use the money for. So yeah, and that we're months away before we just start to decide where the money's going to come from. Frankly, we're hopeful that all of our improvements will be paid for by the savings in utility costs. Now, generally speaking, I've been in part of these before. What you end up doing is combining a project. You'll say, well, we also need to do this and that, which really isn't a part of the energy savings, but while we have the contractors here and the disruption to everyone, we may as well do that anyways. So that's where those additional dollars can come into play and create some synergy and some economy of scale there. Any other questions? If not, I anticipate taking this to committee and then to full board for approval. Thank you. Our next item is, the invocation policy. As you recall, last month I brought to the board a policy that basically was addressing how we go about having an invocation before our meetings. The history is such that it's pretty much been a rotation through the board, and they would get up and do an invocation as they saw fit. There's been, obviously there was a lawsuit filed. Someone took offense to that. And then in doing research, obviously our attorneys are involved, we determined that the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, federal court, had already dealt with a case similar to this, and basically had said that if you create a policy that says that a member of clergy in your community randomly, you don't tell them what they say, come up and do an invocation, it meets we'll say the letter of the law, at least according to that particular court. I would also hasten to add that the Supreme Court has taken up the issue. So, frankly, and that's because there's various courts across the country who have differing opinions. So the Supreme Court is preparing and have heard arguments on this issue, if you will, and plan to render a decision we anticipate by next summer, July, August, sometime, perhaps early fall at the latest. That's what I've been told. At this point, I think the board, obviously everyone looked at the policy and said, well, we need some more time to talk about it, think about it, do a little more homework on our own. And I, at this point, would entertain questions and comments about that. Commissioner Elwell.
Mike, has anything changed in this policy from what was presented before or not?
No, we have not changed the policy, nor the recommendation.
I don't know if you want to talk about the specifics of it here, or maybe Personnel and Finance on Monday, but
Yeah, we can do the committee.
you don't want to talk about them here, the specifics of it, or you do?
No, I'd just do that at the committee. I want to talk about the broad nature of the policy and what.
Well, I was going to give you what one of my issues were, but I can wait till Monday is fine, too.
Okay. Commissioner Rice.
Thank you. I'm going to wait for committee as we move forward on most of what I've done as far as my homework here, but I do want to make some comments here. I've had contact with a judge and had a nice conversation with that judge. I've also contacted the Center for Law and Justice, and I've also talked with the Solicitor General's office, an attorney there, an Assistant Attorney General. I've also talked with them for quite an extensive time, and several other people, but I will, like I say, I'll wait for that as we move into committee. When I look at this policy, obviously this policy was, shall we say, born out of the fact that we received this lawsuit, because Administrator Overton is correct. Locally throughout this country, there's been this type of lawsuits going on, from what I've been told, for 30 years. And at this point, there has been no conclusive decision made. In fact, we also have a second circuit court case going on as well, besides the 6th District Federal Appellate Court decision at the Supreme Court. We also have the 2nd District court case as well, involving the same thing. So again, throughout this country, there has not been a definitive answer on this from the perspective that as far as a court having any government, whether it be federal, state, or local government, no one has been told to cease and desist or been given a court order to stop what has been any of our practices for, I'd like to say probably over 100 years or longer. So, and I also believe that some of the things in the lawsuit we need to be very cognitive of when it comes to this policy, because if you break down some of this lawsuit, and I'm not going to go through it all right now, but in this lawsuit by Mr. Bournemouth, we've there's comments in here that I really believe we as commissioners need to take a close look at when we're considering a policy that's been presented to us. I'll just give you some examples here, and I will try to be very brief, but the plaintiff comments, he came to this secular government body, and he was, quote-unquote, forced to acknowledge Jesus Christ as God. My response to that is, we would never do this. My next comment is, the complainant comments about having Jesus Christ and the Christian religion shoved down his throat when he comes to conduct public business. This commissioner's response is, we would never do this. The plaintiff lawsuit states the Jackson County Commissioners attempted to coerce the plaintiff into professing a belief in the deity he despises, Jesus Christ. My response, I know of no commissioner coercing Mr. Bormuth for his right to believe as he does and pray as he wants. The lawsuit mentions the Establishment Clause. The quote there is, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. My response, we as a commission have never established a policy prohibiting the right of any person's right to have their religious beliefs or prohibited the free exercise thereof. The vast majority of Christians and non-Christians that I have talked to and who have approached me want me to stand firm on this. So I will not support lying down on the rights of people that I represent, my fellow commissioners, false claims and false allegations. Again, to create a policy out of these things, from my perspective, attacking our rights with false claims and false allegations, for me is no reason to put together a policy of this nature. I've heard that I hear that, well, there's potential legal cost. Well, when I consider everything in this lawsuit, when I look at this policy, if legal costs are necessary, my position is that we stand up and we fight this lawsuit. There will be more. Thank you for now.
Other commissioner comments, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We will move this on. Our next item for discussion is the Resource Recovery Facility. It's one of those where to begin. It's obviously been going on for some time. December 18th will be the last day that Veolia operates the Resource Recovery Facility. That will be the day that all of the burners, the incineration elements of the Resource Recovery Facility will have been cleaned and closed. The oils, fluids, liquids, all the other chemicals, drums removed from the facility, that'll all be complete by that date. However, we will still have our DEQ permits in place. And DEQ permits come with some potential, they come with obligations. Obligations to make sure that the environment is protected, that all the contaminants are contained, those sort of things. And we need to close out those permits. Now, that's either we close them out with the DEQ or we relinquish those permits over to the Department of Corrections or the state budget, land management budget. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen with those yet. We're still in discussions. We are trying to arrange meetings there. We've had some challenges arranging meetings with the state on that very issue. They're not necessarily in agreement on what they want to do. On one hand, the DOC has indicated a willingness to sell the property, if you will, the facility to the county for $1. On the other hand, another arm of the state says they don't know anything about that, and when they talk to the DOC, it's not the same. So we've been in contact with both those. They're working on that. We refuse to be the mediator for the state on that, two different state departments, so I know we've been involved with those folks, and they're working through their issues, and hopefully we can arrange a meeting here very soon to discuss that. However, given what I said about the DEQ permits, our intention is on December 19th that the facility will still remain open and that we would still be in bypass mode, which means all those folks who take their trash personally in their vehicle to resource recovery facility can continue to do so. Haulers would continue to operate as they do today in the bypass mode. That means they go to the resource recovery facility, run across the scale, and then ultimately we'll take it on over to McGill Landfill. For how long are we going to do that? That's difficult to answer. My expectation is no more than a few months. We do need a little more time to close out those permits, as I say. And part of the challenge with that is, with those permits, flow control, and there's lots of legal requirements and strings, if you will, that go with flow control. You have to have a reason to have flow control and that sort of thing. And part of our justification at this point is that we still have some potential liabilities, some potential costs that are unanswered, and frankly, we don't believe we have the resources to deal with that at this point. So we want to continue with that. I do not anticipate it being for the long run because, in all honesty, at some point these permits will be finalized, and at that point we would have no legal basis to maintain flow control. At least that's my belief. Not an attorney, not a judge. I would add that we also have a contract with Waste Management. Had that for years. It's their landfill. They own the McGill Landfill, and they operate that. Their contract does expire mid-April. They have shared with me that they have 8 years of, and I want to get this correct because it's legal nuances, if you will, that they have 8 years of approved capacity. Now, that doesn't mean that they have 8 years of capacity right now as it sits. That means they have been approved by the state regulators to add a cell, to make some modifications to what their existing facility is, so that they could support that kind of volume for the next 8 years. They would like to enter into a long-term agreement with the county. Of course, at this point, we are in no position to do that, because we frankly anticipate that we will not have a legal basis at some point to maintain flow control. So we can't very well guarantee where trash is going to go, therefore no long-term contract with Waste Management at this point. I think it's also important to let everyone know, the public in particular, that at our next Board of Public Works meeting, I anticipate speaking with them about reducing the rate currently charged for flow control. It's currently $77.70 per ton. As I indicated, Veolia contract expires. Their last day at the plant will be the 18th. Our costs will drop. Thus, we can afford to drop our rate as well. So we'll be looking at that. I'll be discussing it with them. And they, of course, make a recommendation to the full board here. Questions? Concerns? Julie?
You make mention that you're going to bring it up in conversation at that next meeting. When is that next meeting scheduled for?
December 16th.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have an estimate on what you think it'll drop to, or what you're going to recommend that you can share with us, or no?
A significant reduction, yes. Commissioner Duckham.
Mike, as far as the permits that we hold, are these renewed? Do they need to be renewed? Do they expire? What I'm asking, do they expire and need to be renewed in the near future? Or are they permitted until you actually request that they be discontinued.
Now,
I'm just wondering if by
we
June they're...
no, we need to take no action in the immediate future on these permits. Frankly, it's our belief that we will have them closed out prior to any necessity for action.
Thank you.
Our next item is Adam Brown's going to talk to us. Our interim park director is going to tell us about Adopt a Park.
Good morning. I presented this to the idea, at least to the Parks Commission, at their November meeting, and I sent them these slides afterwards. The gentleman called the county to inquire about the opportunity for him to adopt a park. And the specific one he was referring to was the Clark Lake County Park. If you'll recall, the Parks Commission recently just approved a concept plan for the Clark Lake County Park. Although mostly that plan is for the shoreline restoration, and this board approved some money last year in the capital plan, actually it was in 2013, to match money through the township, Columbia Township, for that shoreline restoration project. Mr. K. Phillips is the gentleman that contacted me regarding this, and so I went out there and drove the property with him, and he had made these detailed maps of every tree in that park. His primary concern is around the house. There's a house on that property which is leased. The property is leased from the county, I think, for $1 a year. The house was floated over across the lake to that property, as some of you recall that. And it's beautiful. It's now a community center run by a nonprofit board. So we drove around the property and looked at every tree, and I just want to give you an idea of the things he was showing me. I found him very engaged in tree culture. I don't know what to call it, but he was much of an enthusiast about trees and very, very supportive. And I found it highly interesting and educational for me. This is an example here. This is a willow tree. It's split near the bottom, and there's stress cracks. And he believes that's one that eventually is going to fall, potential to hurt people. If you look at the back side of it, you can see that the effect of that stress crack a lot better of it. These are my notes. We were in the field that I made on my iPad, so don't be too critical of them, hopefully. This is a tree that was taken down a while ago, but the stump was never ground, and so it's just blooming again and branching out again. So that's one you would want to take out and grind up so that that doesn't happen again. These are 3 beautiful maple trees that really need to be tended to. They would need to reduce some load at the top and cabling the large branches of the top together so that they don't wear out the tree. But a beautiful canopy there that you don't want to lose and is worth saving. Here's a couple of dead trees you can see there. Those are pines. You have pines growing into hardwoods, a maple there. You can see the effect of that at the top. That means dead branches. That means things are going to fall and with the potential to hurt people. This is one that he is immediately concerned about because he said it's leading toward the house, and one he would want to take down quickly. There's another view of it. You can see the park back there, or the lake back here. And this is the back side of it. And this is what he's talking about here, is that it's hollowed out. And so eventually that tree will die, and probably sooner rather than later. So what Mr. Phillips was proposing is that he owns a tree business, trimming, taking down, grinding, is that he wants to come in and take care of these things at no cost to the county. He can't do all of those things immediately, so he'd try to fit it in with his business as he can. With that, probably that one maple tree with the most immediately. So the Parks Board met and discussed this, and my intent was to program it after some of existing programs. And this is MDOT, for example. They have 3 programs: Adopt a Forest, Adopt a Landscape, or Adopt a Highway. Adopt a Highway we're most familiar. So we have a template for doing these kinds of things that we can borrow. I've talked with MDOT, and hopefully I can get some documents from them that we can draft up. And so the Parks Commission said go ahead and explore that. So I need to contact Mr. Phillips again and then also start to create this program for it to work. But it's extremely positive interest, and undoubtedly I'm sure he can do something with the wood for the trees that have to come down. The part to figure out is how to manage that. He has an extensive plans of every tree on that property and what he believes needs to happen to them. A lot of them he thinks need to come down, and I'm sure that's an area where the Parks Commission is going to want to be interested in managing. The last thing they want to do is go out there and find that there's 3 trees left on the property when it's a pretty wooded property now. But I don't think that's what he has in mind, but we certainly, the Parks Commission would want to figure out a process to handle that. The reason we bring it before you today is the chairman suggested that he thought others might be interested in this, and so we want to put the concept out there early, even though it's still in a prototype phase and the development phase. But if there's parties interested, this surely could be a way for the county to save money. The reality of it is we have enough staff to do minimal maintenance at these parks. They're spread out all over the county, and you know it's basically cut the grass, keep things trimmed up and safe. We don't have the expertise or the money to have somebody come in and do this kind of work, so this is a great opportunity for us to jump on. And is there interest? That was the question I posed to the Parks Commission, and they said there was on their part. So
I've had the privilege and honor to be involved in quite a few different recapitalizations of the parks, whether it was through Liberty Township and their rebuilding of the picnic shelter at Round Lake, Boy Scout projects to reclaim the Lime Lake property and make toys available and make a safe area out there and install different amenities that were needed, or Vandercook Lake, where one young man took on rebuilding 2 of the picnic structures out there, and also then involved in the shoreline restoration at Vandercook Lake. I think that there are people like Commissioner Duckham, who is aware of people. I know that you were involved in the Vineyard Lake type arrangement. I think the Adopt-A program would be very good, because now we can also show recognition to these people who have stepped up and become local, willing community leaders in cleaning up our county parks and helping us maintain the real jewels that we have in the community. Our county park system is a free system. And I know a lot of families have told me, I remember when I was a child and we had this problem or this problem with our family, but we always could go to the county parks for the weekend. We always could go and picnic without any problem at all. And I really think that there's opportunities here for adoption, that we can formalize relationships and really take some pride in some of our parks.
yeah, Mr. Phillips is Mr. Phillips is very exciting to be around, because he just has a passion specifically for that park, because he grew up in that area and he remembers running amok as a youth there. So Some of the other issues to figure out is the liability part of it. I know Mr. Phillips runs a business, so he has liability insurance, but if you get a private citizen there, we have to figure out how to work that out, but that's really just a technicality that we have to work out.
I know Columbia Township's very excited. They've wanted for probably 3 years now to partner with the county, the Clark Lake Park. I'm just wondering if the concept how popular it might be if we ask a township or a municipality that has a county park in their area, what would you like your park to be? What would you envision would be best suited for the park, in your belief, to benefit your citizens the best? And then, okay, can we partner with you to make that happen? And basically, we got a dollar-for-dollar match or something to that aspect.
Right now, we're working out an agreement with the Village of Grass Lake, who's interested in running the county concession stand, which we haven't run for a number of years, but they have an interest in running it and also tying it in with some youth leadership programs where they'd actually have youth come in and run that. And in exchange for that, we're hoping to get some type of maintenance relief where they would maintain some of the property around there, allow us to put our resources, allow us to stretch our resources. So things like that are occurring. And the agreement with Clark Lake or Columbia Township on that shoreline restoration project is another great example of working together.
Adam? My only concern, Adam, would be that there's somebody monitoring what comes down, but it sounds like he's done all the legwork to lay all that out. I'll also say that I think it was 2 years ago, there was a huge tree that fell out there and came very near a granite monument that's there by the path. I think it's a monument to one of the founders of the area, but it came very close to knocking that down. And this plan that he's putting forth would take care of things like that, it sounds like. But it also might be something that starts a trend in the county. We've got a lot of tree removal services in the county, and if they see this one company doing this, they may step up, I suppose, and potentially take other parks would be a good thing. In case businesses in Columbia Township, not far from there, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Adam, you have up there is there interest, and I can say from my perspective, there is certainly interest, and I believe this is an excellent idea to move forward on and continue to gather information and see what we can come up with.
Would you like me to address the ad hoc committee for the Cascades while I'm up here?
Yes, I think you can give us a little update on that. My only comment imparting on this other proposal is that we will want to probably take a look at working with a forester. I've, over the years, dealt with, I'm sure most of you too, many tree people, tree removal people, and there are many varying thoughts on how you handle certain trees in certain situations, and we could end up with quite a bit of differences from park to park, area of the county, if we just allow the vendor, if you will, to do it. So I think a forester or somebody, perhaps MSUE could help us out, professionally trained in that area. So with that, though, I would continue, please, Adam.
Yeah, the extension office would be a great idea to help us out with that. We have some tree experts there. Wanted to address this with you because some of it will hit the media today if it hasn't already. It was from the ad hoc committee, the Cascades, last night. And so I shared these slides with you, and without an explanation of it, it's some of it's self-explanatory, but I thought we'd just run through it real quick. It was an excellent meeting, very exciting. What the committee asked the Spicer Group to do was to break it up and see what the feasibility of maybe taking the wall down first, and then what's the order look like after that, and also how does that affect the cost breakdown. So they divide the project into these three areas. First is the amphitheater demolition and the reconstruction, and then within that there'd be 4 projects. And then part 2, and these aren't in order, these are just the three phases of the project. mechanical and electrical improvements. They've broken that into two. One is making the necessary improvements, and then the other ones are the nice-to-haves, which are included in the plan, but they're not essential to the continued use of the facility. So that's how they broke that down. And then the third one was the exterior improvements. That's the repair to the concrete and the ballast and things like that. So this is just a proposed way that they broke it down. First is the wall removal, which should be under $500,000. They have a finer detail in the coming slides. And then number two, the twos there could really go in any order that the committee or the board feels appropriate. You could work on the plaza space, the new buildings, the structural improvements, or the Phase 1 electrical and mechanical. And then the last one would be the enhancements, which would be the improved sprinkler systems and the or fountain systems and the lighting. So that's how they broke it down. And again, this order, these four in the middle would be at either the committee or the board's discretion ultimately. But that first one, the wall breakdown at $500,000, this is what they're talking about, is taking down the seating area, which is sloped, and stopping at this part of the venue. And these are a little bit difficult to see, but basically it's this area back here that they'd be taking out. And what they would do is replace it with grass, and they'd put up the wrought iron fence behind it, so that the space would still be usable. And for programming, people could bring lawn chairs, blankets, things like that, until the final plaza was finished. So, and then this is how that breaks down cost-wise. And when I said it was under $500,000, their preliminary estimate is $422,000. The only thing to caution you is the engineering costs are spread out through all 6 of those phases. So, and the engineering is something you'd want to do all at once. Roughly, preliminary engineering, you're looking at 5% of the total construction cost. So it's probably $500,000 in just engineering. And then the other, there's probably another 3 to 4% in project management, inspection, and review, which would also go to the engineer. We haven't bid this out yet. We haven't bid the engineering part of it out, because we don't have enough to fund the total engineering. But I think the reason the committee was excited yesterday, I was excited, was that this is a very doable chunk here and a quick success that's possible out at the Cascades. So that's just the explanation I wanted to provide you to those slides that were presented to the committee yesterday. And the chairman of the committee probably want to add things about the other, as well as Ms. Alexander and Mr. Palachuk.
Yeah, anybody can feel free to pipe up. Julie and John both on the committee. Yeah, it was pretty exciting to hear that, and especially we got that initial figure. We had asked Spicer Group to break that down, or break the project down into different groups and then make a recommendation on which should come first. And there was substantial discussion about the 4 different options in the number 2 group. We want to make sure that when we make a recommendation of the full board that we're not suggesting work to be done in an initial phase that has to be torn out later to do something else. And that's kind of why the removal of the wall is kind of exciting, because if they take it out, level it, plant grass, then it's all set to do whatever we need to later without any huge expense. But we're of the belief, I think, speaking for the committee, that it's going to be more doable breaking it down for fundraising purposes into different chunks. And I think the most consistent thing we've heard from everybody probably through the years is take the wall down. And that is going to show buy-in. If we're able to do that, make that recommendation to the board and have the board do it at some point, that'll show the public that we're serious about it, open it up, let the public see it, and if this is the plan that's followed, it'll still leave that area very usable. So our plan is at this point we have another meeting scheduled January 16th, 4 o'clock here in the chamber again. Spicer will be doing a little more of the busy work on the plan. and we hope to either have a recommendation either at that meeting or maybe one meeting after that. We've continued to meet with, bless you. We've continued to meet with foundations. We're having good success in conversations with them. We're not making application for any funds. We're just having the initial conversation to see what the potential is. And everybody that Adam and I and Julie and others have talked to have been very positive about it. So we're excited and hope to have a recommendation sometime in January probably. And Julie and John, if you have any comments, feel free.
You covered it. Commissioner Alexander, a question?
Is this, no questions on that. I was just waiting for commissioner comment.
Well, first, let's open it up to public comment. This is the last opportunity for public comment this morning. If you'd like, please come up, state your name. You have 3 minutes, please.
Peter Bournemouth. Comments on the resource recovery facility, it's shutting down, and once again, I noticed Mr. Overton mentioned the possibility of the county purchasing the property from the state for $1. I want to remind you that there's phenol contamination on that property. Your own documents indicate as such, and therefore the county should not be purchasing this property even for $1 because the remediation might cost several million. Thank you. I just wanted to add that.
Mr. Overton, thank you. Good morning. My name's Mark Muich, and I'd like to talk about the flow control ordinance. I want to support Mr. Overton's suggestion that you maintain it on an interim basis for as much as 90 days. I'd like to suggest to you that you continue it perhaps even further. In speaking with people who are experts in recycling field and solid waste field, they feel that a flow control ordinance is an extremely valuable tool for funding programs to deal with our solid waste and especially recycling. If we look at our solid waste plan, there are 3 different options. There's 1, 2, and 3. All of those options contain the opportunity for recycling. Emphasis on recycling, and an emphasis on recycling. That's a quote from our solid waste plan. I would suggest to you that we might be able to use $1 or $2 per ton of that flow control ordinance to fund recycling programs, which in the long term could reduce our solid waste even more than the volumes of it, even more than the incinerator did. So before we contemplate withdrawing from the flow control ordinance, I would say that we try to imagine using that as a recycling tool. We need to talk to people at DEQ, and I know you said you had trouble with it. I'm not sure that you can even legally stop the flow control ordinance because I understand it's in the solid waste plan as it was written, and therefore you can't change it until the solid waste plan is amended, even though you created the flow control ordinance as a legislative body. So I'd hold on to it as long as we can and see if we can't be creative about it. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing, hearing none, we'll move on to commissioner comments. I believe Mrs. Alexander was first.
This is referred to as paybacks. I'd like to wish Commissioner Palachuk a happy birthday today.
Happy birthday, John. Anyone else? Commissioner Shotwell? With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.